What's up, YouTube? Scotty Tradition, back with another video. Um, with all the Hall of Fame talk in the air, there is actually something going on today. The NFL Hall of Fame modern candidates are being voted on. A little bit later today, we're going to find out which five members will join the Centennial class for the NFL's 100th anniversary in the NFL, or I should say the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So far, there's been 10 players that have gotten in already due to the Centennial class. Now, largely, what it was supposed to do was allow players from the 20s, 30s, and even before that to try to get in the Hall of Fame, players that have long been forgotten, but what it's turned into is, a few guys from the 80s have gotten in, and, I don't know that maybe that was what they intended doing this, but there's been some players that got in that were maybe a little bit questionable players getting in, players that were really good players, like Jim Covert comes to mind, but they weren't great players. And so I'm pretty sure that there's some all-decade team members from the 20s that were left off that list. But there was one Packer that made it in during the Centennial announcement a few weeks back, and that player was Bobby Dillon. He was nicknamed the Hawk. And what's interesting about him is he actually played with one glass eye, and he had, I believe, over 50 interceptions. He still leads the Packers all time in interceptions, and he played in the 50s. So I was fortunate enough to have a few of his cards already. To be honest, I kind of thought he was one of those guys that had been written off for the Hall of Fame, so I hadn't planned on him getting in the Hall of Fame, although he is in the all-time Packers set registry. So I did have his card, an example of it. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you. It's the 1952 Bowman. Here's an example of the Bowman Small. This is an autograph version that I picked up last year, about a year or so ago. And one of these just sold on eBay for 20. The guy had it listed for 2,400 or best offer, and it sold. So can't imagine. And he just passed away about a year ago too. So before he was enshrined, he passed away, which I always find kind of silly. If a guy is worthy, put him in while he's alive so he can at least enjoy it. I don't know why they wait so long on some of these players. I just don't. But I do have a Bobby Dillon autograph, obviously a lot more coveted since he's passed away. He lived a good long life. I think he was like around 90, 89 or 90 years old when he passed away. So, but I love these cards. This one, he's depicted in his college uniform at University of Texas. Beautiful card there, Bobby Dillon autograph. And then, so that was a Bowman Small. And then here is a Bowman Small in Nearman 7. Beautiful card. I want to say I picked this up for around $100. I think these are selling for several hundred now in the grade of a 7. I waited about 5 or 6 years to see an actual 7 come up. That's how scarce these football Bowman cards are from 52 Bowman, especially in high grade. You just don't see them. So with this Hall of Fame induction, it's really going to raise the price on some of these cards just due to scarcity. They're just not out there. Like I said, this one I waited a good 5 to 6 years before I even saw a 7 come up. And ideally, I would have liked an 8. But this was a nicely centered example of a 7 in the new holder. So I went for it. I picked that up about a year and a half ago or so. Again, before he made the Hall of Fame. If I would have picked it up now, that would have cost me a lot more. Then, of course, I have this card as well. The 1952 Bowman Large Bobby Dillon in an 8. I think at the time when I picked this up, maybe 4 years ago, I want to say I got it for pretty cheap, $350 or something like that. And right now there's one listed on eBay for $3,000 or best offer. So that's what's happening with some of these older guys, that these cards are just so scarce, and now they're in the Hall of Fame. So all of a sudden they are coveted by a whole new group of collectors that had normally not paid exactly as much attention to him. Of course, I paid attention to him because I'm a vintage Packers collector. So beautiful card there. And he is in the Packers Team Hall of Fame, and he has been for many years. But the NFL Hall of Fame is what gives the big price nod. And I know I made a video on this before, kind of depicting the difference between Bowman Large and Small. There's the difference. You can see how much bigger the Bowman Large is. They're both really great cards. I want to say there's only one, two, or three graded higher. than this one. So something like that. I haven't looked at the pop report in a little while. I just thought I'd take the chance to show the card since he did get into the Hall of Fame. And then a guy who, and so that was the Centennial class that was announced a few weeks ago. And today is the modern class. Essentially, there are 15 finalists, and 5 of those 15 will be enshrined into the Hall of Fame. You'll see later today, David Baker, the Hall of Fame committee leader guy, is going to go knock on their door. If you've ever seen this guy, it's pretty funny. He's absolutely huge. He's like 6'9", 400 pounds, and he knocks on your door just to let you know that you made it. So, but I'm hoping this guy makes it in. Leroy Butler, safety for the Packers. There maybe is no more player responsible for the Packers' success in the 90s on defense than Leroy Butler. Obviously, Reggie White maybe is number one, but Butler is right there with him. Great player. One of the only players to have, I think he has 38 interceptions to go along with 20 sacks as a safety. Back in those days, safeties were not getting that many sacks, but he was a multi-talented player. Also did the first Lambeau leap. So he's got to get in the Hall of Fame. Hoping for the best for him today. He is a first-time finalist this year, so they're going to put in somebody who's a little that's been a finalist a few more times than Leroy Butler. There's a few more safeties on the list too. Safeties are kind of hard to get in the Hall of Fame. There's Steve Atwater, John Lynch, Troy Polamalu. I think is a shoo-in. He's the only absolute shoo-in that I would say that there is. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, I think. So my 5 would be Troy Polamalu on the first ballot. I would go Leroy Butler, so 2 safeties. I would go Alan Faneca, guard. I would go Isaac Bruce, wide receiver for the Rams. I think he played something like 16 years and has just awesome stats over that time. There's a few other wide receivers on the list too, but I had to separate them. So I'm kind of separating him out by longevity. So Isaac Bruce. And then I think I'd put Zach Thomas in, the linebacker for the Dolphins. He's like a 5-time All-Pro linebacker, and also a Zach Thomas, another kind of jack-of-all-trades guy. I think he had 4 defensive touchdowns. He had a fairly large amount of sacks and interceptions for a linebacker. So he did a little bit of everything at that linebacker position, and that's, jack-of-all-trades is something that I really appreciate. He did everything pretty well. So those are the 5 that I would put in. To be honest, I think the best 5 might be 3 safeties with Butler, John Lynch, and Polamalu, and then 2 guards with Faneca and Steve Hutchinson. But I highly doubt they're going to put in 3 guards and 2 safeties. They're going to mix in some offensive players in there for sure. So it will be interesting to see later, who gets in. Always a fun time. So yeah, I just wanted to share that little video with you. And like I said, I am glad I picked these up when I did, because now they're just kind of going for crazy amounts. And hopefully my boy Leroy Butler. And I love these cards too. These are the action-packed. You can see the little R there for rookie. I mean, the action-packed cards, there may not be a more nostalgic 90s card than action-packed, especially early 90s. Late 90s, I think Fleer Metal is one of the more nostalgic cards for me. But thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.